Now, it is weird to me that it's like here, Horizon. Do you like big open world single player adventures? Well, here is a 3v3 co-op action game. Buckle up, everybody. And again, they're really trying to make Horizon this flagship franchise. You mentioned how many Horizon games we've gotten. There have been 5, not counting remakes, remasters. Mm-hmm. There's 1, there's 2, there's Lego, there's VR, and now there's this. Oh, sorry, 6. There's also the other MMO type shaped thing, Monster Hunter like thing. Is Aloy the Sony mascot? Is Aloy the PlayStation mascot right now? Because I feel like there's a stack of games that would suggest as much.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, she's their busiest, right? Like she's getting the most work. I don't know if like they seem odd, like choosing a specific mascot this generation and putting one or more of their characters as like front and center icons like they did during the PS3 and PS4 era. PS4 era specifically, like they built entire marketing campaigns about being like Kratos is here and Nathan Drake and we got all these other guys are all hanging out in the bar or whatever, right? Like a lot of their commercials. Well, let's take a look at the sort of the history of PlayStation mascots and some of the problems that Sony has run into with having a definitive character attached to their stuff. The obvious answer is Astrobot, which is by definition a mascot. He's a little guy who represents PlayStation. Like the PlayStation is the controller is his spaceship. Like you cannot have a more on the nose mascot platformer. But the charm of those games so much is running around and dressing up as other characters from other video game series, which kind of I don't know. It kind of makes you realize exactly how much Sony doesn't really have that anymore. Like I feel like they've kind of strayed away from it, and they came out swinging. The original sort of PS1 mascot was Crash Bandicoot, right? And he was a guy would come out in a costume and take a megaphone and yell at the Nintendo headquarters, and he was a nuisance animal.
Yeah, he was a real pain, that guy. And there was also Spyro, who was cute, colorful character too, a little bit edgier than Mario. And then both of these weren't 100% owned by Sony, so they are actually now owned by Microsoft, which we've talked about in the past on here. But that is kind of a bizarre, funny thing. You look at the other most iconic characters associated with the PS1 era, and so many of them are third parties. So many of them are associated with, they're not Sony owned. You've got Cloud from FF7. You've got Lara Croft from Tomb Raider. You've got Snake from Metal Gear Solid. You've got Resident Evil. You've got Tekken. You've got Tony Hawk, which is a real man. You've got there was a Spider-Man game on there. Like there's all these characters, but they all exist under someone else. So like these are the games that we associate with that console generation, but they're just, they're not there. Meanwhile, you look over at what Microsoft is doing, and they're like, they've had Master Chief since day one. They've had Gears since, I guess, day 360 or whatever. Like they're kind of doing a better job of having this recurring stable of characters and IP that people associate with the platform. And like obviously Sony's doing fine, so it's sort of a non-issue, I suppose. But as far as like having this, having these almost generational mascots, so many of them they can't actually have under their own roof. You look at PlayStation 2, and the big ones were, you had like Ratchet and Clank and Jak and Daxter, which were great. Those seems like they could have really kept those ones going. They also had some other ones. They had, Twisted Metal at that point, which is also on PS1, still going on PS2. There was Shadow of the Colossus and the Team Eco stuff. Those are all things they could have kind of like elevated to the same level that we're seeing with Horizon right now. Yep. But they kind of didn't. And there's an argument to be made that like maybe it's for the best that these characters didn't get franchised the hell out. PS2 also had, they had Silent Hill, and they had Spider-Man, and they had Kingdom Hearts, all of which live somewhere else. They don't, PlayStation is only the weekend parent for them. And then, the PS3 era, things started kind of getting gritty. Like you got Uncharted, Sackboy became a whole thing. Where's
Little
Sackboy?
Big Planet? That whole era was like, that felt, I mean, that was that they were doing proto Astrobot stuff, where Sackboy's thing was the same thing, right? He was a chameleon. He would just turn into, like, he was recognizable on his own, but seeing him dressed up as other iconic IPs and stuff like that, that was a big part of the appeal there.
Yeah, and it's, again, there's a part of the issue with having a cute and colorful mascot is that's completely at odds with this kind of general narrative direction that so much first party or so much gaming stuff in general has gone. Yeah. you mentioned you mentioned Kratos. He's a god of war. Like here's a 3-word title for a video game franchise, 2 words of which are immediate kind of like red flags for conversations you might have to have with anything even hovering near being an all ages property. There's no world where Kratos is going to be like family friendly. That's just not a thing.
No, it's two things you don't bring up at Thanksgiving, basically, right?
Yeah.
Separated by the word of.
Yeah.
which might stand for OnlyFans. We actually don't.
There it is. Yeah. God OnlyFans war. That's, I don't know how you got there, man. That's, but even
this episode is brought to you by Dayquil.
There, I love it. Keep it going. You're doing great.
No, but he was also, even when they would put in commercials with everybody else, you were like, I don't necessarily buy that he would be at this bar with everybody hanging out, because he'd be like, oh, come on, I got to go to Nathan Drake's going away party. I hate this guy. Like, he wasn't really down for it, but he's not a mascot, right? Like, he's a guy. He's a symbol.
Yeah.
He's a dad, and he's, even
God
of OnlyFans war. But
again, even that, it's like with the PS3 era, you've got Nathan Drake, who's a charming mass murderer, and you've got Kratos, who is a less charming mass murderer. Like, you've got these two guys who do a bunch of M-rated violence, and they're one is basically Indiana Jones and the other is, basically Thor. Like there is a way to present them in a sort of, more family friendly approach, or to make them a little bit more, I guess, sanitized. But rather than doing that with the PS4 era, we got like an older, grittier, sadder version of Kratos. And then instead of Uncharted, which is like, haha, we're going to solve a puzzle, it's like, hey, the world has been infested with mushrooms, and here's this sad ass game about a mass murderer who hits people with bricks and a 2x4 with The Last of Us. Like, it's The Last of Us, obviously massive success and a huge sort of, I mean, again, we're spinning our wheels here about the importance of a mascot platformer, pointing at like, look at what Mario's doing, but it's like, that's not what they're trying to do.
They're not aiming for that. Yeah, I think that's specifically the conversation, right? Like, and this is not to say they haven't tried. Like, they made a mascot platformer fighting game, right? Like, PlayStation took a bunch of their characters and they made a fighting game, and it didn't really connect with a lot of people. Like, they've made games like Mod Nation Racers, and like they've done stuff where there's like theoretically an excuse to put these guys in a go-kart, right? Mm-hmm. But they're not franchising out their characters like Nintendo is. Like, they're not going to be like, Nintendo's whole thing is like, Mario and all his friends are in a stage play, right? They're all buddies that they work in the same theater troupe, and sometimes on the weekends they hang out and they play golf or tennis or soccer or baseball or whatever. And sometimes Yoshi does his own thing, and Luigi inherits a house from his like weird uncle for the 5th time, and it's haunted. And like, these things happen a lot, right? And that is just canon or normal, and that's fine over there, right? And then they put out a kart racing game every couple of years, and you're like, they're all together, everyone's here, right? And Link shows up sometimes, then they all beat each other's asses in Smash Brothers. PlayStation doesn't really want to do that. They're not really interested in that. But I think just by association, people are like, well, you have characters that we connect with your brand, and some of them we go a long time without seeing. Like, it was hard to make Kratos a mascot when he got one game, right? He got one game that generation. And it was it's a 10 out of 10 game, but it's like, that was it. He didn't show up and play golf and tennis and puzzle games and all that crap. Would have been funny if he did, but he decided not to. And same with Nathan Drake. Like, he, kind of sailed off into the sunset or whatever and retired. And that's, there's only so much you're going to get out of these guys. So Astrobot and previously, Sackboy was kind of the closest they had for a while of being like, this is our guy, and he's an excuse. He's like he was this sort of proxy to bring in all of these other characters. He'll wear these costumes. He'll be the Bloodborne hunter, and he'll be, Aloy and all that stuff like that. And like, that's cute. That's fun. And I think that's the closest that they'll ever really get. And so
I guess with the thing I don't particularly love the Horizon universe or property. Aloy, I'm not crazy about. And it's just sort of frustrating to me that like, here's this demonstration that they can take an IP and explore versatile different avenues to put it in. Like, there's a Lego version, there's a VR version. They could put out like a Horizon kart racer and it wouldn't be that weird compared to some of the stuff they've done with it. But I guess I just kind of wish that they'd picked a different property to do that with, like,
I feel you.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like if we Lego God of War, that would have been cool as hell, but that wouldn't have happened because Lego doesn't want to do M-rated stuff, you know? And
it's and again, like Astrobot showed that you could take some of these IPs and scale them down. Like there's a God of War level in Astrobot, and it's really cool, right? Like it basically says like, how do we take all the essence of this franchise and we pare it down into like a fun platforming kids game for all ages, right? So it's doable. It's like God of War could be, you know, you and I are old enough to know that like God of War could have been an 80s Saturday morning cartoon with an action figure line, right? Like RoboCop and Aliens, Predator and Terminator all got toys that you and I both own because we have brain damage. And like explaining those original IPs to your parents as a kid wasn't necessary because they would just be like, oh, Terminator or Alien, Predator. Yeah, I understand the general concept of what's happening here. Got it. A cop that's a robot? Weird, but okay, cool. Here's your toy, you know, clean your room. And now I feel like, you know, like they are very hesitant to do anything like that. They want to keep their IP separate, but Astrobot is a good excuse for that. And that's also a great case study that, yeah, you could take some of these IPs and make them into a sort of all ages thing. And not necessarily like they're playing tennis and golf and kart racing, but I like where your head is going of sort of just like, it would be cool to get more God of War games. It would be cool to get more Uncharted games. It would be cool to get more basically any first-party PlayStation game.
That's kind of what I'm getting at here.
Just the big AAA cinematic third-person blah blah blah, right? Like these IPs can theoretically scale to more experimental, smaller things, and I think that helps keep the lights on for the brand. Period.
I guess
right?
I guess what I'm really trying to get at, what I'm kind of tiptoeing, tap dancing around, whatever, is that Sony has a lot of iconic characters that aren't actually Sony's, which they can't actually do anything with. That's up to their respective owners. So that's a non-starter there. But then Sony also has a bunch of older legacy characters that are just kind of kicking around that they're not doing anything with. And instead of getting, I don't know, a new Twisted Metal game or a weird, colorful, rebooted version of Jack and Daxter or a new spin on Uncharted or whatever, we've gotten 5 Horizon games.
Yeah.
6 Horizon games. And it's like, I don't know, maybe. And again, there was a quote ages ago about like just, I don't know, Sony wanting to steer clear of just legacy content. And there's always that issue to like, oh, we got something shiny, we've got something new. And it's, I don't know, Horizon's not that new anymore. And some people are into it, but I don't know, it's neither here nor there for me. Like I feel like they're really just trying to make Aloy the sort of the face of a good portion of PlayStation video games, and we don't have a whole lot of other stuff going on in that department. You've got, you know, this year looking ahead, you've got like Raul Coley in Saros, which is cool, but again, it's sort of a new spin on Returnal. And then there's Wolverine, who they don't own anymore. That's somebody else, you know, they're playing with someone else's action figures, and it's yeah, I don't know. It's maybe we'll get some cool stuff coming out of this state of play that's coming up, but yeah, it's just I don't know. I guess I wish I enjoyed Horizon more than I do, because there would be a lot of things for me to be excited about. But instead, I'm kind of sitting here twiddling my thumbs, being like, well, never hearing from Bloodborne again. I don't know.
No, I totally feel you. I think if you really like this IP and you got really into the lore, then I don't necessarily know if this new like 3v3 game is for you, because it's not necessarily addressing any of the things that you might like from the other thing, right? If you really like big, gorgeous, hyper-realistic open world games, this is not that either. So it's odd. It's odd. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like and I get it, because like coming off of something like Concord, where they're like, we need to make a games as a service, but we're going to do it with completely original cast and characters that ultimately don't resonate with anybody, like almost instantly, right? And they had to pull that game down. And this is still like the Hunter, you know, Horizon Hunters Gatherers or Gathering. I always say Hunter Gatherers because that's like it's a joke in my house where like as men we used to be hunter gatherers, and we used to go out in the field and like, you know, kill a bobcat.
And now you go to Trader Joe's or whatever. Yeah,
now I'm just like, oh, I'm like texting my wife from the store. I'm like, which frozen thing should I bring home, right? A real hunter. No, so it's odd to me that it's like this is where we landed with this, because I don't necessarily know if people who are really into the first 2 Horizon games are going to love this, but I understand why they're making this, because this gets people in the door. People would have ignored this entirely if it didn't have any of the familiar branding of an IP that they already recognize, because we've seen them do that, right? And this was part of their big games as a service push, was putting, you know, a dozen studios on these games at once. And it is odd that like the Last of Us one didn't make it to the finish line,
or God of War.
But this one did, right? And God of War, you know, it's never too late. I have a feeling we might see something from them soon. Like, that's not me trying to make news headlines. I hate being that guy, but it feels like it's been long enough. So I'd personally love to see what Sony Santa Monica is working on. And I think if it's a Lego game, you're going to be really mad.
Hey, thanks for watching this clip from Beyond, IGN's weekly PlayStation show. You can find the full episode over on youtube.com/IGN Games. And don't forget, new episodes of Beyond drop every Wednesday on IGN.com, the IGN Games YouTube, and all your favorite podcast platforms. Thanks again for watching, and as always, Beyond.